society. My understanding of the just society is a society that respects the rights and liberties of all its members, and this is a society we are seeking for. Our Women's Caucus has made every effort to back up the cause of women empowerment, protection of women's rights, and finding solutions to the challenges facing women, whilst at the same time serving as a platform for public participation for women in the legislative processes. This institution lives in the principles of the Women's Charter that declare women as equal beings to men. Today, we are about to benefit from the insight of the leading women of our society, who will share with us the different initiatives and strategies to overcome hurdles that prevent women and girls to participate equally with men in all spheres of the society. We will hear from these women as to how we can be empowered to arrive at the just society I have alluded to. This meeting today is the meeting of the collective voice of women, a meeting that will demonstrate the power of sisterhood, who are lifting each other with the aim of connecting and building a strong network of powerful and productive women and girls. Remember, we are gathered here under the one theme, namely, choose to challenge. Yes, women are choosing to stand up for themselves and pose a challenge. Whilst we choose to challenge, we also invite our men counterparts, because we know that there are progressive men that are also fighting the injustice of inequity. So we really lobby the men of our province, of our country, the men of the world, to really join us in our program of trying to make a just society. Every day, though our actions and in the way we lead, the way we talk and act, we challenge norms and stereotype and all the patriarchal system and its roots. We really challenge it all. We pass laws that protect women. We act and inspire others to create a world that is free of gender-based discrimination. And today is another important day in the history of KwaZulu-Natal legislature, as we seek to strengthen our fight for an equal society. Ladies and gentlemen, women and girls, this is the purpose of our coming together here. With those few words, I have no doubt that at the end of the session, we will walk away with vigor and much strength to face the world as the soldiers and no more victims, but conquerors in the fight against the atrocities women face in our communities. Thank you very much. This is the purpose of today that make us to come today, joining millions of women in the world and standing on the shoulders of those women who started this day by fighting the injustices at the workplace, where they were saying in the equal work, equal pay, and also fighting for social rights, political rights, and economic rights. So today we are going to listen to our phenomenal women that are going to do the presentation and empower us further to say how do we take forward this challenge that we have started, to say we choose for challenge. The whole world is saying that we choose to challenge. Thank you very much, colleagues. We will then move to the next item, where we are going to request the Honorable Speaker of the Legislature, Utatewethu Mahubela, the leader and the face of the Legislature of KwaZulu-Natal. Over to you, Utatewethu Mahubela. Siyabonga.
Okay.
Sizocela kunemoto ND 12855 Ulundi Municipality White Corolla ivimbe indlela besicela umnikazi wayo ayosigudluzela yona bengaze bayiqubule ngamandla amakhulu. Sorry, Honorable Speaker.
Program Director, the chairperson of the Women's Caucus in our legislature, the deputy chairperson of committee, the chairperson of the CWP chapter of Honorable Taluza, the deputy public protector in the Republic, connected virtually, Nkosazana yasemzimkhulu efama KwaZulu Natal, Advocate Talega, Maislalo, the former chairperson of the CPA Africa region, Advocate Maserco, the Gender Commissioner in the Republic, Dadewethu, sesihlala nawe KZN in this fight for gender equality in the Republic. I call her differently, the next person I'm going to acknowledge. I know that we call her the Chief Director Capacity Building, KZN Corporate. I call her what we require in the state, a capable public servant. Ms. Hunete, the AG, the Economic Advisor to the President, Ms. Makanya, members of the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, the Secretary to the Legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, the heads of department that are with us, inkokheli zemikhandlu ezihlanganyele nathi ngokuxhumana lapho ezixhumene nathi khona, amakhosikazi esinawo lana phakathi kwethu nakwindawo zonke esihlangene nazo ngokuxhumana la esifundazweni saKwaZulu-Natal, labo abasixhumanisa nezwe nomhlaba wonke uma silana, zethameli zethu manene nani manenekazi, ngivumeleni ngoba ngiyazi ukuthi isiko alingivumeli ukuthi thina abantu besifazane sibe kukhona esikwenzayo, kodwa ngivumeleni namhlanje egameni lesishayamthetho saKwaZulu-Natal ngikhulume nabasendlunkulu kaZulu. Sibonge isikhathi esisitholile sokukhuliswa isilo samabandla onke ongangezwe lakhe. Uthina njengesishayamthetho saKwaZulu-Natal ubengeyena kuphela isilo nenkosi yethu noma inkosikazi, kodwa ubengumzali uqobo. Ube inkosi yethu, abe ubaba, asondele kuthina kwedlule iprotocol ye-royalty, sihlale naye etafuleni singabesifazana, sihlephule naye isinkwa singamantombazana, siphunge naye itiye ngaphaya kokuthi lithini isiko, sibambe izandla nongangezwe lakhe sikhulekela isizwe. Ube sibamba futhi ngesandla asikhombisa indlela. Sisebenze naye ngenhlonipho, isidima nesithozela. So for us as the legislature, it is truly a difficult and sad day today. Made difficult not because we thought that there is immortality anywhere, but it is made more difficult by the understanding of the finality of the mortality of an individual. And when you look back on the path and the road traveled, and understanding the importance of the lessons, looking at the road and wondering then, the well that you have been drinking from wisdom that have suddenly gone dry, what will carry you through? So, ngithe endlini kaZulu kaMageba libe mfipha emini nakuthina njengesishayamthetho saKwaZulu Natal. Siyakuhlonipha Dejana, umdala weyinsuku, yena owazi singakwazi, yena obona lapho singaboni khona. Kodwa iy'nsuku esizihambe nongangezwe lakhe, iy'nsuku eziyigugu eziyiqhawe kuthina, ezisikhulisile njengesishayamthetho saKwaZulu Natal. Uma besikwazi ukuzenzela bekungaba elinye ilanga mhlonishwa uMadlopha ngebaqondananga, kepha-ke siyabantu asikwazi ukuzenzela, ukhona ukwazi ukuhlela iy'nsuku. I want to come back to today and say I am humbled and honored that we have been able to commemorate this year's chapter of the International Women's Day in this legislature, led by the current leadership of the Women's Caucus, the steering committee, and the chairperson, Honorable Madlopha. It is particularly important for us as legislators and public representatives to meet with our stakeholders, not only to report on the work we're doing here, but also to reflect and draw fresh mandate to repurpose our thoughts for the year ahead. This year's commemoration particularly stands out for me and for women in the globe and our province, amongst other reasons. Notwithstanding the inequalities that we all know and that we have been facing due to patriarchy, women have all collectively been affected by COVID-19 and subsequent economic meltdown due to the lockdown period that has faced all citizens of the world. But it must also be noted that during the lockdown periods, we saw a further escalation of reported cases of domestic violence. This shows us that whilst we are all negatively affected by international pandemics, but for women and children, the effects are far-reaching than that which is felt by society generally. This shows that the vulnerability of women is continuing to be not that at the workplace, at the street, at the society, but it continues to escalate at their places of safety, the home. A place where a woman and a child should be protected, but they have been proved to be more vulnerable. Also, this week that we are commemorating the International Women's Day for the province of KwaZulu-Natal, it coincided with the conclusion of the review of the Women's Charter as led by the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. This province saw women from all our districts gathering to share views on how best we can effect policies that can reflect a gender-sensitive workplace, as well as closing the pay gap between men and women. This must also be reflected. This gender sensitivity must also be reflected, colleagues, in the standing rules of our legislatures and councils, by first openly affirming maternity and adoption leave rights for all. When I emphasize on for all, I mean that we must move beyond the era where maternity rights have been saying that they are for the mother or for the father. We must be aware that we are living at an era where sexuality has been brought to question, whilst the Constitution has clarified the same question. That will also see us ending discrimination in all its forms. Women continue to be discriminated in terms of gender, but also they are also in some instances part of perpetrators of discrimination through culture and religion. We must therefore stand and fight for this wherever it shows itself, and the KZN legislature must be committed to work through its sectoral programs and rules, standing rules, to improve and effect a non-discriminative and tolerant environment in the province and within its own chambers. We must not pay lip service to non-discrimination, but we must act it. This will be just a BGIQ symposium next week, where we will continue our interactions with the sector and report back on matters raised during the 16 days of activism of 2019. And this is part of the adopted program of the legislature for the year. Of course, we will not leave the work that we have planned, which includes the Women's Parliament, which will be held during the month of August. The Women's Caucus, the CWP chapter, and the Quality of Life Standing Committees all have programs that are designed to address women issues throughout the year. I must mention that the Quality of Life Standing Committee has already started with its work. Ngamasonto adlulile, ngesonto edlulile, ekuqaleni kwaleli sonto. Usihlalo wekomiti le-standing committee ubeyingxenye yalabo ebebemele umama ey'ndaweni zasemahlutshini obezeyoveliswa phambi kwekomkhulu esesichengeni sokudingiswa ngenxa yokuthi yena nomndeni wakhe abakholelwa ekuthaneni kumele agqoke inzilo uma eshonelwe umkhwenyana. Abantu abaningi endaweni bafuna agqoke inzilo abonakale. Bakwazi ukuyoba yingxenye bahlala phansi behamba nomnyango wakwaCopter nomnyango we-Office of the Premier. Kwakwazi ukuhlalwa phansi kwayisixazululo. Ngoba i-Women's Caucus eholwa umhlonishwa uMadlopha has enforced an environment in the legislature that makes the standing committees that deal with women issues account and report to the House with areas of enforcing proper oversight over the implementation of women's rights. But now that the Women's Charter has been reviewed, this will make the work of the Standing Committee on Quality of Life and the Women's Caucus much easier. Because abantu besifazane bakwaZulu Natal bazikhulumelile naphaya ngesikhathi kufikile usekela sihlalo we-NCOP kanye nosekela somlomo bazisho izinto abafuna zilungiswe kakhulukazi baziphakamisa iziphakamiso zokuthi nangona ikhona inkinga yokungalingani kwamaholo kwabantu besifazane nabesilisa kade inkinga enkulu ukuthi eminye yemikhandlo abayakhele ayinayo kahle kahle i-gender policy eqondile. And ishayamthetho kumele sikubhekelele lokho ukuthi all municipalities have gender policy. Siyazibophezela ke njengeshayamthetho sakwaZulu Natal ukuthi sizokulandelela lokho through these committees nangekomiti lakwaCopter. Okunye futhi esizimisele ukukwenza throughout the year is to continue to have these interactive sessions, either through the Women's Caucus, through the Quality of Life or the CWP, before we even have to those that are done by the portfolio committees. And our own standing communications, the speakers' standing programs between the speakers interacting with the Gender Commission are still standing for the year. And we want to take those and put them into action during the 16 days of activism period. This is just to say that the commemoration that was proposed by the chairperson of the Women's Caucus is not just to celebrate or to make tick a box. There is the rest of the work that we will report with in the following year is going to be done collectively by all of those. But I would also be doing a disservice if I do not appreciate the work that is led by the steering committee of the Women's Caucus in ensuring that women parliamentarians are capacitated when they go sit in portfolio committees, start to deal with one elusive matter, gender budgeting. If we are to deal with gender pay gap, we have to arrest it, Honorable Madlopa, the manner that you are doing with the Women's Caucus. Equip us as parliamentarians with skills to determine gender budgeting. This is appropriation season. And during appropriations, as women, we must go and understand how much is going to assist umama osembali. How much is going to assist umama osemshort? How much is going to assist umama opanibela in umkhanyakude? That is gender budgeting. How much will be channeled to development of rural women and also the younger women in the budget of the province, regardless of the cuttings that have been effected due to the economic meltdown. But women must not be left out of the budget. Ngalo maziko ngifuna ukuzothi wala ipanel yenu ingakwazi ukuxoxa kahle, and we wish you all the best. Siyabonga kakhulu mphathi wohlelo.
Isikhulumile imbokode. These are the phenomenon women esinazo ezibhekele inselele yethu. Siyabonga kakhulu Mahubela, siyabonga kakhulu Somlomo. Njalo isupport esitholayo njengama committees uma ngabe senza umsebenzi. Siyabonga wathinta abafazi. Siyabonga kakhulu Somlomo. Sesizongena kuma panelists azokwazi ukuthi asethulele. Ngenxa yesikhathi sifisa ukucela uDeputy Chair of Committees ukuthi hleze asifundele iprofile yabo bonke kanye singalokhu sithi sazi ukuthi the type of panelist esinazo today zitshebe kangakanani olwazini kulomkhakha bazobe bewupresenta ngoba bonke ba relevant kulama topic esiwathuzile njengeKwaZulu Natal legislature led by multi-party women's caucus ukuthi sifuna ukuthi sithole kuwo ingqikithi ne-understanding njengoba uMahubela ekhuluma nge-gender response budgeting. Siyayiphusha Mahubela njenge-multi-party women's caucus. We are saying ngo-2019 the framework ye-gender responsive budgeting, planning, monitoring, evaluation and auditing was implemented at a national level. We are saying it must be realized now, and it's not going to realize if we as women, we are not joining hands to make sure that we push ukuthi wonke ama-department njengoba eseshilo uMahubela ukuthi akufanele ukuthi indaba ye-non-discrimination kube ukuthi ze lip service kufanele ukuthi si-akhawunte ngebudget ephumayo kuma-department ukuthi abantu besifazane babhenefitha kanjani. Asisho-ke ukuthi masikhuluma nge-gender response planning budgeting sikhuluma ngokuthi kuzobalwa amasenti kuthiwa nanka amasenti aye kumasibanibani. Sikhuluma nge-impact after analyzing i-budget ukuthi iyenze yiphi impact empilweni zabantu besifazane. Uma sikhuluma nge-service delivery iya-addresswa yini indaba yamanzi, iya-addresswa yini indaba ye-electricity. So ngizocela-ke, siyabonga kakhulu Mahubela ukusho ukuthi sizojoyina, we are going to join hands ukulwa in all the corners ukuthi impilo zabantu bakithi konke ama-sphere zempilo bakwazi ukuthi abantu besifazane bathathe kanjalo. Ngizocela-ke u-chair of chair, u-deputy chair of chairs okunguManzini u-Honorable Makhosazane Zungu azosethulela i-profile yezikhulumi zethu ama-panelist. Kodwa i-guest speaker izokwethulwa laphayana udadewethu uMadlopha Mthethwa, uyena ozosethulela i-guest speaker. Sifisa nje ukuxolisela umntwana uPhumzile obekufanele ukuthi naye abe kanye nathi ngenxa yesimo esesivelile eNdlunkulu bube sevuka ehamba ephuthuma ekhaya. Emkhulekweni yethu sizohlala sibabeka njengoba noMahubela esebekile ubuhlungu esingakho ngokukhothama kwesilo. Over to you, Manzini.
Thank you, Program Director, Honorable Madlopa. Greetings to our Honorable Speaker, all our panelists, ladies and gentlemen present here and the ones that are having this session visually. I greet you. I don't want to take much of your time because we have to ensure that we try to hasten our program. The task that was given to me was to go through all the profiles, which I'll do. And when I do, I'm going to start from the first panelist that is going to present, that is Halima Kunota. When pioneering pay equity strategies to bridge the gap in the workplace, Ms. Kunota is one of the success stories among South African women, which are becoming more and more common in our society, gradually shifts towards respect and reward for the fairer sex. She is the chairperson of KZN Women's Authors Forum. She holds a master's degree and is currently finalizing her PhD at UKZN. Her career tells you her life's journey, starting off as a graduate at UKZN, after which she became the first female elections administrator for KZN in 1994, moving on to work in administration and further lecturing at the UKZN in the Faculty of Social Science. She thereafter worked as an international relations officer for DINOSA based in London, advancing South Africa's agenda in the international arena and traveling to more than 10 international countries during this time. After that, she joined the National Parliament as the first female HR manager and the youngest manager of that particular time. Ms. Konoto's recognition of her capabilities led her to being promoted as a political advisor within the office of the Chief Whip, where she was responsible for the capacity building and international relations. She has worked in various ministries in KZN, namely the Treasury and Culture as the Chief Operations and the Head of Ministry. Currently, she is the Chief Director for Capacity Building, responsible for provincial capacity building strategy, as directed by Cabinet, and as member of the National Culture Capacity Building Forum. She is the first elected chairperson of Women Management Forum for KZN Culture and machinery that seeks to drive gender parity as per government's agenda. She has featured in various publications among the cosmopolitan magazines, naming her as one of the annual Awesome Women. She has launched her first capacity building blog in South Africa platform for all capacity building like-minded minds across the world to discuss and share ideas. She has published 2 books on capacity building in the municipal space towards contributing to body of knowledge. The President of the country, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, has signed forward for both her first book, which is titled The Smarter Municipality Against the Ills of Local Government. Her second book, Women Empowerment in Public Sector Amidst Gender-Based Violence, titled Gender Activities for 16 days to 365 days a year. This is also a forward by most of the prominent leaders in government, including the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disability. We have MECs, we have the speakers, and many more, including Salka Chair. Her passion in ensuring that creativity is applied, in ensuring the state is capacitated. That will be our profile for Ms. Kanocho. Then the second one will be the profile for the Commissioner, Tamara Machebola, the Chairperson of Commission for Gender Equity. She holds a master's degree in education, cum laude, and she is pursuing her doctorate in education with Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, University in Melbourne, Australia. She has a clinical background and has worked in several hospitals, clinics, including the Department of Health. She completed and holds a certificate in gender and human rights from University of Pretoria. Her leadership and work experience extends from working with national to regional education and social development programs to other leadership responsibility in the public and private and civil society sector. This program focusing on alleviating poverty, addressing unemployment, and achieving equality for women, men, young women, girls, and boys. She has years of experience working with national, international donors, funding institutions such as National Youth Development Agency, NYDA, USAID, Irish Aid. In this institution, she worked as program advisor for the NYDA's Youth Entrepreneurship Program, the PEPFAR Health and HIV Gender and Human Rights Program, and served many years working for Embassy of Ireland, National and Regional Integrated Development Program. She was a lecturer for Commonwealth Child and Youth Development Program at the University of South Africa and RMIT, respectively. She was the Provincial Director for Planned Parenthood Association of South Africa and Love Life, IPPF affiliate, and worked in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal provinces. At the Commission for Gender Equality, she is the current chairperson and chairs the Good Governance and Social Ethics Committee, the Strategic Plan, Monitoring and Evaluation Committee, Human Resources and Remuneration Committee, as well as the Fundraising Subcommittee. She serves in the Commonwealth Youth Alliance and SF8's Regional and South Africa Youth Workers Association boards. The third one is the profile of a Deputy Public Protector, Advocate Kollega Talega. Advocate Talega Nompilo was appointed Deputy Public Protector at the end of January 2020 by President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed her for 7 years renewable term of office effective from the 1st of February 2020. Her appointment came on the back of a recommendation of the National Assembly following a thorough and transparent selection process spearheaded by a multi-party parliamentary committee. A seasoned lawyer who holds a LLB degree obtained from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in 2003 and nearing completion of master's degree in commercial law with Johannesburg University. She brings to her new role an impressive skill set and a wealth of experience in legal practice. Prior to her appointment, Advocate Talega was also admitted as an advocate of High Court in 2006. was a special advisor to the Minister of Public Service and Administration, and was prior to that doing consultancy work mainly in the criminal justice space. She also formed part in the Committee of Inquiry into the state of affairs in municipalities across Gauteng province between 2016 and 2018. She was a special advisor to the Minister of Home Affairs, respectively in the areas of administration, legal, policy, strategy, compliance, and governance. She was, after spending more than 12 years at the National Prosecuting Authority, where she rose as position of Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecution in 2011. She has risen through the ranks of NPA, which she first joined in 2004, and as an aspirant prosecutor, later becoming a specialist prosecutor on sexual offenses. In 2006, she was appointed junior state advocate, becoming a senior state advocate 2 years later, paving the way for her promotion to Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecution. She has a good acumen in litigation, management, and governance. Born in Johannesburg and grew up in greater parts of the country, such as the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Advocate Galega obtained her senior certificate at Itopo's Little Flower High in 1998. Advocate Galega is a former national chairperson of the Society of State Advocates of South Africa and a member of Black Lawyers Association. She aspires to utilize her legal acumen to enhance good governance in all state affairs while also improving good ethical conduct by state functionaries. Siye Kwesine, which will be the last one. Venuja Maharaj, who is a chartered accountant in South Africa, a corporate executive auditor general, or a corporate executive in the AG's office. Born and quickly made her way through the ranks, first as a deputy business executive for KwaZulu-Natal province and as a business executive in 2012 before she was promoted to corporate executive in 2017. As a corporate executive, she is also a member of the executive committee of AXA. She is responsible for KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape, and other national clients and ministries that are allocated to her. She was previously on South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, SAICA, board and as a vice chairperson of SAICA in the Eastern region. She notes that juggling work, family, and friends as a woman presents some challenges because of the expectations that are often placed on women, especially for someone with a hectic schedule as hers. She says that her approach to this is planning well in advance and prioritizing things that truly matter to her. Having a supportive husband and children who understand really makes a difference. She says, that's what she says. Coming from humble beginnings, she says that her parents are her driving force because of the role they have played in shaping the woman that she is. Her vision that she could dream, that's her vision that she dreamt when she was younger. That her parents, she notes, they're the one that has instilled a strong need to make the difference in the lives of the others. And she said that the corporate executive in AXA, she is particularly grateful to be able to contribute towards the betterment of South Africa at a high level through the countless decisions that have to be made every day. Open quote, it means a lot to me that I get to make difference in this country through the office. We are always making high-level decisions that have a great impact on our country, and I don't take that lightly, close quote. Those are the words by Maharaj. Thank you, Chair.
Ize ngaphambili izosenzela ipoem bese siqala sisukumisa ama-panelist wethu. Over to you, ndodakazi.
Ngicela ukunibingelela nonke ngaphakathi kade ngangifisa ukuthi all protocol observed kodwa manje angizwanga umuntu ewusho ngathi ayi angubambo wami nami. Ngibingelela ngokukhethekile abantu besifazane in the space and all over the world. Igama uthando fuze. So I went back to look at nursery rhymes we did in primary school and trying to understand ukuthi sasithini. And this is what I learned. In first grade, we were taught that no woman comes out alive. That in order to get one back, you need to send one in as an offering, as a sacrifice, because what is a woman but a dying thing? What is a woman but a sacrifice? First grade, we learned that women are always trying to escape. That 9 out of 10 times women will fail to escape. But we were taught that if that one time you manage to escape, run. In first grade, we learned about the deep depression that women sink into. We learned that someone always knows about women's suffering, knows when they disappear into the thick of silence, into their skin, or disappear for speaking up. But we were taught that no one is coming to save the woman but herself. So, what happens when women who have died more than once get to heaven? I imagine that all worship stops and all other women gather to await the coming of a storm. But it's all joy and ululation because death has become our saving grace. And as one woman arrives, ushered by the greatest of her great-grandmothers, she sits in front of a timeline of women fallen from her family tree. And with a sigh dragged from the back of her mouth, she says, I think we're going to need more wine. Gabrielle has died more than 8 times along with all her joy in bundles. Her body has kept her prisoner for decades for being woman. Convinced her arms they're unwarm enough to cradle mankind. Her womb couldn't stomach the screams of babies born of loud bones, of warrior descent. Babies born of a woman who holds power on her tongue. Another woman arrives, a gleaming light to a congregation of women singing Hosanna in the highest, my mother. A woman of the cloth fed us prayer when she realized that sometimes death is building entire worlds in the heart of another, only for them to set sail and settle in the backyards of other dying women to build crumbling castles in the air and then step out and leave them, raising black Barbie dolls in broken homes, 2 women, unsure of themselves. It showed in their steps, and as their innocence crept, they kept looking back at their fading dreams, too young to fathom how death found them, snug in the arms of their so-called lovers. Uzolile noJabulile, their names sound like a quiet storm, unlucky to have stirred up a mess of a love. They woke sleeping Goliaths with not enough Davids in their throats. They died by the gun and fell at the feet of their men. One woman walked in a flame. She came flickering to her demise, followed by another, a massive explosion, a supernova. I guess it is true that some stars glimmer long after they have died, and maybe to die before you die is a synonym for all women bodies. I too have died. In pages, on stages, in hallways, untwining my fingers from my lovers, too afraid of stares and slurs. I grew tired of loving with my art, every lover a metaphor. How could I dress my heart in such awkward attires of dissonance for such an honest love? But how could I not? What harmony could come from such heavy flight? My thoughts take flight and hovers over the women of Sierra Leone, Australia, the States, back home, Africa has always raised her daughters with their heads held high, her hands still tied, her belly mined of her gold and oils, and still remains the uproar of oppressed nations. Some women are born cities. They are skyscrapers, born to stand erect, to rewrite history. Some are synagogues. They are places of worship. Some women are igloos, incredible things of marvel. Some are oceans of holy, oceans of baptism reduced to blood rivers. We are walking monuments. But first, we are human. We are women. And God knows we are not afraid of dying. Yabo.
Siyabonga kakhulu kuThandeka Fuze. Njengabazali siyajabula mangabe ingane zethu zikwazi ukuthi kube khona ezibhalayo bese ziyakusho. Siyafisa ukuthi bakhuthazeleke, basupporteke. Njengesishamthetho saKwaZulu Natal ngenkathi sihleli i-steering committee sishilo sathi siyofuna ukuthi sithole the young women abangakwazi ukuthi babe nento abazoyidlulisa kuthina. Siyabonga kakhulu Thandeka. Siyabonga mntanami lawo mazwi owashoyo ukuthi nathi singabantu before singabantu besifazane. uNkulunkulu uyazi ukuthi konke okwenzakalayo uma ngabe kuvela kuyena siyobhekana nakho. We choose to challenge. We choose to challenge. Siyabonga kakhulu mntanami. Asiphinde simuphe elinye ihlombe elikhulu uThandeka. Siyafisa ukuthi babe baningi oThandeka abaziyo ukuthi kwenzakalani ezweni, ngoba iy'ngane zethu namhlanje nazinakile kakhulu ukuthi ikwakheke isizwe, bajabulela nje ukuthi abazali basekhona. Uqhubeke mntanami, uNkulunkulu akuqinise wenze kube kukhulu. Now sengizocela ukuthi ngibize one of us, udadewethu uHalima. uHalima is one of the women okwi-public service, is one of women abakwi-administration, but i-difference yakhe uya-understanda ukuthi njengoba kwi-administration kubalulekile ukuthi aqhamuke namaqhinga okusiza uhulumeni emthethweni nasemgomeni ayibekile uhulumeni. Sifisa nje ukubonga ukuthi one of us in KwaZulu Natal in the Department of Culture uyakwazi, ngoba inkinga enkulu esibhekene nayo umlando wabantu besifazana waziwa ngoba ubhaliwe phansi. Even unkosikazi owenza imanga eSamaria kuvele kuthiwa unkosikazi waseSamaria akanalo igama. Sibonga ukuthi uHalima ubhala incwadi ayibeke phansi indlela zokuthi usizakala kanjani uhulumeni wethu ukuthi a-implemente, nathi njengabantu besifazane sisizakala kanjani, ngoba uma ezokhuluma namhlanje hleze sizokhuluma sikuthathe sibuye sikhohlwe, kodwa okuningi ukubhalile incwadini zakhe eziwu-2 ekhuluma ngo-16 days of activism, othi encwadini yakhe kufanele bewu-365 days, and zonke iy'ncwadi zakhe umongameli uyisayinile ubaba uCyril Ramaphosa ebonga umsebenzi wakhe omkhulu. So it's a phenomenal woman. Dadewethu uHalima, sicela ukuthi uzokhuluma nathi, sibonga umsebenzi nje wenzayo dadewethu. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Program Director. I would like to start by thanking you for really driving this program. Ngicela ukubingelela ngokukhethekileyo our Speaker of the Legislature, Honorable Boyce, I would also like to greet the Deputy Chair, Honorable Zungu. I really want to greet our religious leaders and all VIP guests who are in this forum here and at home, the panelists, and of course, people who have made it happen, the legislature staff. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of you. I'm really honored today to be part of this engagement where we are sharing knowledge, but also championing way forward, because that is what is important. My topic is really one that resonates very deeply with me: pioneering pay equity strategies to bridge the gap in the workplace. I have a presentation which is flighting for those who are at home, but I would really want to get into the crux of my presentation. I would not go into the focus of the presentation in the interest of time, because I will be narrating on these as I go along. I start off by defining equity, because I think the challenge we have is to think everyone understands a basic concept like equity. Equity means fairness, fairness to achieve through substantive equality. We all know that the COVID-19 has really amplified and heightened all existing inequalities. As women, we are aware that the 5 years we have lost due in 1 year, the gains that we have made, that is. And our constitution requires employers to move beyond formal equality to substantive equality by acknowledging that society gender roles can have created differences between women and men employees. The workplace has to treat women and men differently in order to treat women fairly. I then do resonate with the hashtag, we must all choose to challenge inequality against women in all its totality, not through the identified dates where we commemorate women, but 365 days a year. I want to move on to the legal policy framework as our basis as a country and a nation in terms of Section 9 of the Constitution. It provides that everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefits of the law, and that no one may unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone else. The legislation that arises out of Section 9 of the Constitution applies to gender equity in the workplace, including Employment Equity Act and the implementing strategy for equity in affirmative action and reduction of pay differentials. The National Policy Framework, as we know, this is housed in the Office of the Status of Women in the Presidency, and really it was developed to ensure that gender policy framework must be championed, and equity of opportunities and equality of treatment as a means to achieve the broader goal of gender equity is achieved. I think the income inequality on my slide 6 really is what I want to speak to you about, so that you understand in terms of research, because as a government official, my responsibility is to ensure that my work encompasses holistically elements that move our government forward. And I have resolved to research as part of what I do, so that I could be factual, understanding that research is but a tool that really sounds to many. South Africa has the highest level of income inequality, and I think this is really a recent Bank World report wherein the GIN coefficient rose from 0.61 to 0.64 in 2009. Low economic growth and rising unemployment have contributed to this persistence in inequality. I think the IMF, as in the International Monetary Fund, last year also reported that this inequality manifests in skewed income distribution, unequal access to opportunities, regional disparities, and in this regard, inequality is an outcome of discrimination on the basis of race and other factors as well as gender. Just briefly on definition of pay equality, the pay equality, a narrow definition, really speaks to pay inequality as an equal pay for men and women doing the same work. And the broader definition really looks at the impacts of all sectors and is still far from resolution, largely because of an unexplained component of the wage gap, usually associated with discrimination. I think our country and our government has really tried its best to ensure that there are tangible efforts to reduce income inequality. And some of these I can just narrate to you are employment equity and affirmative action, social grants that have been dispensed. Even during COVID, we know that these were upped. Of course, putting a hole into the budget for this country, but it is an important element. Minimum wage, adoption of the United Nations Development Agenda, including the Sustainable Development Goals, NDG, the radical economic transformation, and the gender policy framework. In trying to ensure that you weigh yourself against what is happening in the world, because we are in a macroeconomic economy that we live in. South Africa's national policy approach to gender equity is aligned with the international trends. And in this regard, we're talking about the GDI and the GEM, Gender Employment Measure, and the Gender Development Index. The data from these indexes exist in the country to understand how its laws, policy, and programs impact differently on women and men. As we would know, we have to, of course, monitor and evaluate whether what we have put in place is at least providing an impact to what we are seeking to achieve. I think the categories in the gender gap index that I'll go through into details are the participation gap measures differences in rates of labor force participation. The gap indicates difference in income and also a gap in career and workplace advancements. I think in terms of the global gender gap index, their findings are that the gap across all categories is 68%, which is quite high margin if you look at what is happening in the country. It means that globally there is still a 32% gap to close in order to reach gender equity. I think my next slides, which is from slide 12, really give you the crux, as in a tabular format of all the weighings of where we stand in the country. We were, of course, rated against 149 countries in terms of economic participation and opportunities. We are at 91, which is not so bad. Educational achievements at 72, health and survival at 1. And I think this has really been proven by the period we've gone through, given the strategies that were employed by our country in ensuring that we curb the COVID-19 spread. I think the lockdown has really been intensive. So it shows that we have a health system which responds to the need of health and survival. Political empowerment, we are at 17, which I think we can improve on. We go on to the economic participation and opportunity, which is slide 13. Labor force participation, 78, which is good. Wage equity to similar work is 117, which shows that a lot of work is done and implementation is taking place. Estimated earnings at 88. Legislators and senior officials and managers, we are at 70. Professional and technical workers, we are at number 1, which also resonate with the good infrastructure that South Africa has in Africa. at large. Educational attainment, the literacy rate, we are at 78, which goes to show that there's a huge gap in literacy in our country. Enrollment in secondary education, we are at 117, and enrollment in tertiary education, meaning that most people who actually leave school are able to go to tertiary education. I think NEFSFAS as a model is working quite well. Political empowerment. South Africa's ranking out of the 149 countries in terms of women in parliament, we are ranked 9, and women in ministerial positions, we are also ranked 9, which is good numbers if you are comparing it with the rest. Workforce participation, I think here we are seeing the categories speaking to youth, not in employment or in education, and we are sitting at quite a high rate. More importantly, this slide, I needed to demonstrate the disparity between the women, which is grave. This really shows that in all the areas, unemployed adults, discouraged job seekers, women, workers in formal employment, high skills share, workers employed part-time, proportion of unpaid worker per day, in all these categories other than own account workers. Women are at a higher level in terms of a margin, which is what we must shift. We must challenge to shift this gap to actually exceed the gap by being in front of the males. Changes in gender wage gap, I think, however, results show that the gender wage gap was stagnant over the period between 1993 and 2015 with the introduction of anti-discrimination legislation and affirmative action. One would have expected that the gender wage gap would have declined over a time, but that's not the case. So I think for me, logically, this shows that there is a huge pushback. There is still resistance in trying to ensure that elements on women are advanced on. And I think it really is a sad state of affairs because our country has the most advanced legislations, yet there's poor movement in these areas. Strategies to close the gap. I think for me, I'd like to spend a bit of time because this is where I feel we must focus on and ensure that change takes place in the field. Gender mainstreaming is an international recognized strategy for achieving gender equity. It means that gender perspective is integrated into preparation, design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and policies. Gender mainstreaming requires a systematic inclusion of gender concerns. Kuyadingeka nje ukuthi kube ne-conscious will from all parties that are involved, nalabo abahamba phambili kuhulumeni ukuthi bashintshe izinto ngendlela ebonakalayo. Gender mainstreaming means placing gender on the agenda, raising awareness of unfair gender discrimination and taking gender equality into account in each and every decision made by an organization. I'm glad to say that as government officials, we will be signing APPs which will be including the line function yokuthi yonke into yenzayo fanele ucabange ukuthi i-impacta kanjani i-gender, and ngicabanga ukuthi lokhu kuzokwenza umahluko ngoba it's internalized at the ground to the functionaries who are the foot soldiers of government. Implementing gender mainstreaming is not concerned only with increasing the participation of women, it is also concerned with the quality and conditions of their participation. A gender awareness and a gender perspective into workplace policies and practices, budgets. I think the Honorable Speaker spoke about gender budgeting. And for me, as a capacity builder, we need to integrate this even into the IDPs. IDP, on all areas around gender inclusivity, because that's where projects and programs go masipala, because that's at the playing field for government to ensure functionality. Data, as in data rather, not layer cell phone, but as in ucwaningo olwenziwayo ukucompare nokwenzeka kwezinto kubalekile nokutrainwa kwama-officials. And I'm saying here, u-NSG, njengoba sazile ukuthi besine lockdown, kube ne-approach which is very strategic on ethics. As our government moves towards an ethical and transformative state, it was understood that wonke umuntu okwahulumeni ngisho ngabe u-HOD noma ngabe u-intern fanele understand ama-ethics, so that le concept it's drilled into every person. We then all were expected to do the ethics course online, and I was amazed by most of the content because I myself had to do it. My HOD had to do it. So I do feel the same approach needs to be taken on gender. It needs to be a compulsory training program for all officials, more importantly, those that make decisions, like your HODs and your senior management. I think the belief is that people understand gender issues when in actual fact it's a speciality, and I do believe the value of having compulsory training on this area will really bridge a huge gap. Towards the end, Chairperson, I think gender-sensitive planning, our speakers before me have spoken about this, because all of our achievements rely on resources. There must be a responsive and inclusive element with gender, with budgeting, so that this element is ensured realization. Affirmative action, we know that this has been a radical move towards ensuring gender parity. These measures can be seen as fair discrimination that is applied in specific cases in order to overcome unfair discrimination. It means to empower women through gender equity. Gender fair employment policies enables employers to ensure that their human resources policies and practices are based on non-discrimination and reflect employment equity principle at all stages of employment. I'm concluding now, and I really want to say that South Africa complies with international practices in pioneering pay equity. We are so advanced. There is a comprehensive legal and policy framework supported by best practices, implication strategies to bridge the gap in the workplace. Yet gender equality includes pay equality remains challenging to achieve. The gender pay gap, that is the difference in wage between men and women for the same or substantially equal work, still remains high. Despite the presence of constitutional rights and enabling legislation to prevent workplace gender discrimination, South Africa continues to see a stagnant median gender pay gap between 23 and 35. In this presentation, I have reviewed some of the actions that can be taken into improve progress towards the goal of pay equity. We have a new model at local government, which is the DDM, and I do believe that advantage must be taken at the inception of DDM, ukuthi issue agenda be on the agenda of the DDM, because here we are talking about one budget, and therefore, whilst it's in the budgeting stage, when the districts do that and the municipalities, it's important to ensure that gender is on this agenda. I think I want to close off by saying most devastating for me as a gender activist and a woman at large, women's bodies are still battlegrounds of power as gender-based violence continues to unabated, as rape and sexual violence continues to be used as a weapon of war and conflict, as assaults on the reproductive rights of women persist, as sexual harassment in workplaces and educational institutions endure, and the girls continue to be treated as of less value than boys. There needs to be a strong political will on the issue issues of gender equity. Hashtag let's challenge the gender gap. Thank you, Chairperson. Also, in closing, just want to say that my book on gender is really something I felt was important to give back knowledge that will live beyond generations to come. Thank you, Chair. Okay, the books on, the first book is on local government, smarter municipality against the ills of local government, mainly on what is the status quo on corruption, political interference, nepotism, and both these books are at Adam's store up the road or in Hilton in Pietermaritzburg for now. Thank you.
Asibonge kakhulu kudadewethu Halima usesitshelile ukuthi imiphi imithetho ekhona nama strategies esingawasebenzisa ukuthi sibreache i gender gap ngokwePay ukuthi mangabe senza umsebenzi owodwa kufanele ukuthi sithole imali eyodwa futhi sizokwazi ukuthi ama presentation siwathole njenge multi-party women's caucus and then we are going to uplift izinto ezizobe ziraisiwe sikwazi ukuthi siye phambili manje sengizosukumisa udadewethu uThamara Mathebula ukuba eze ngaphambili azokhulumisana nathi ukuthi senza kanjani ukuthi kulesi sikhathi se-COVID-19 i-impact yakhona ishaya kakhulu kubantu besifazane, what we need to do going forward. Over to you, Dadewethu. Chairman.
Oh yeah. Angibingelele ngini nanonke. Let me take this off. Put it back on. Let me thank Umphathi Hlelo, ngiyabonga kakhulu, and I greet you all. Let me start by acknowledging umama wethu uSpeaker umama Nontendeko Boyce, umama uSihlalo umama Caluza, honorable members of Parliament, Advocate Maserco, who is not with us but virtually with us, honorable members of the provincial legislature, religious leaders, traditional leaders, representatives of Chapter 9 institutions with us and not with us here today. I also just want to acknowledge members of the civil society organizations, esteemed panelists, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's still morning. Good morning to all of you. I humbly come to this province in particular because this is where my home is. So if the province calls, I leave everything that has to happen in Pretoria and come down to the province. The reason why I am also just a little bit excited, but also sad by the news of Ukukhothama kwenkosi, I can't contain myself. I'm so deeply infected or affected. We used to work together in terms of youth development in various places of the province. I'm excited because this event comes at a time when we are celebrating the International Women's Day. So for me, I think it's a watershed moment when we are celebrating, remembering
how and what women have achieved. And we are also remembering our challenges and looking at where we are in terms of challenging that we still face as people in South Africa as well as people in this continent. So there is that moment. Colleagues, my topic is looking at the impact of COVID-19. And I just want to start by saying that today, it is exactly 351 days since South Africa has experienced this silent killer. And I must say that, I'm reminded how the first case was announced. One of those, news and the newspapers, and unfortunately, incidentally, the first case was a plus minus 30-year-old man who visited Italy and came back home. And coincidentally, that home was Pietermaritzburg, where we are today. And I was listening to Dr. Zweli Mkhize, narrating the story, and I was thinking that Italy, I was there not so long, and it's amazing how we are experiencing the COVID-19 since then. And I must say that it has affected communities, it has left devastating effects on all of us as we have individually and collectively lost our relatives, our colleagues, and we have lost our friends. And we are saying on behalf of Chapter 9 institutions, Chapter 10 institutions, and Chapter 13 institutions, we are saying your loss is our loss. The Institution for Gender Equality is one of the institutions that has been established in 1996 to support constitutional democracy. So can we move to the next slide? I'm not going to waste too much time. I think I have very less slides to talk to. But the Gender Commission basically was established and given a mandate to make sure that we promote gender equality in the country. And I'm going to ask if we can skip the next slide in terms of our mandate, but I just want to introduce my topic again. The pandemic and the epidemic, because it's around the world, has impacted people differently, just beyond the basis of sex and gender. And I want to say that it's important to take an account that when it comes to COVID-19, the impacts come in different intersectionalities. And intersectionalities meaning, it touches on poverty, it touches on issues of disability, it touches on issues of LGBTIQA communities, it touches on men, it touches on women. So it has touched us differently. And I think the way we have responded, both as the country and the world, is different. Here in South Africa, and you will remember that we've been guided by the national regulations, the Gazette number 11062, which was promulgated in March, 25th of March last year. However, using our mandate as a Chapter 9 institution, both as the Commission for Gender Equality, Human Rights Commission, and other commissions, like the Public Protector, like the Auditor General of South Africa, the regulations themselves, those national regulations. And guess what we found? We discovered that parts of the plan as well as the regulations were gender insensitive. They were gender blind. So that big document, which is the Gazette, was gender blind. It did not see certain issues. And I will talk to the examples of this. So So the Chapter 9 institutions and other Chapter 10 institutions were categorized as essential services, so we were up and about and working during this time. And we casted our focus on responses and how the plans, because it was announcements of the Gazette, and then after the Gazette, the ministers would stand up and say, this is what I am contributing to. And we were listening to each and every plan of a government department. And I'm telling you, some of those plans were not looking at issues of human rights in general. And you will remember, I want to point you to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as well as particularly Chapter 9, which talks about human rights, dignity, and all of those things. And specifically look at the Bill of Rights that really talks about how we should actually look at these issues, whether we have a pandemic, an epidemic, but the Bill of Rights, which is the cornerstone of democracy, stands. You cannot say because it's disaster time, I am going to violate your rights, as we have seen happening. So this was an opportunity for us to define what we want and what we want to see in as so far as violation of human rights is concerned and sustainable development of all was concerned. So if you look at what we observed quickly, it's just about 4 things that I managed to take out. We observed gender-based violence, and we observed femicide, which is the killing of women during the lockdown period from level 5 up to level 1 where we are today. Colleagues, you will remember that the police minister, Babu Pekikele, released, crime stats immediately. And I just want to quickly look at also the crime statistics that have recently been released, looking at the period October to December 2020, and look at what has been happening from day one, because the first statistics was looking at the first 8 days, and already there were alarming numbers of gender-based violence, domestic violence that was happening. And if you look at the December one, it tells us that we have actually increased by 5% of crime statistics of sexual offenses that have been noted in different areas. So I really think we have a challenge of gender-based violence, femicide, domestic violence that predominantly affected women, young women, average women, and older women, as well as children during this time. And again, we've been collecting data or information just to capture what was looking, how the picture was looking, both as the police, but also as other institutions that were responsible for collecting statistics. We have also worked closely with civil society organizations in terms of looking at the work that has been done. And I must say that the work that has been done so far was the work that was looking at assisting victims and survivors of gender-based violence. And I know that most of the civil society organizations were quite key here in terms of accommodating or opening their homes and shelters to accommodate victims and survivors of gender-based violence. And again, I think the lockdown period exacerbated the vulnerability of victims of gender-based violence, mainly being women, children, and we looked at how the abusers were behaving during this time, because you will remember that all of us were locked inside our homes together with abusers, and many women, because of infrastructure issues, could not actually leave homes and run and report to police stations for fear of actually being taken away and locked away for loitering in the streets during this time. So let me leave gender-based violence. We have seen what the media is reporting. You have seen how the country has been trying to respond to gender-based violence, including the announcement of the 3 bills those 3 bills that the Parliament is currently looking at and sooner will be passed into laws. These are some of the things that we should actually know about and input into those bills, because they are important in terms of all of us working together to address gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. The second thing that we observed was how people could not actually access just basic services. And if we're talking about basic services, the one that I was able to actually take out of all the basic services was the access to sexual and reproductive health services. What we observed during the lockdown period was that there were a lot of things that were happening, and they were directly and indirectly affecting women, whether pregnant women, women who have just delivered, women who have conditions and diseases. They could not access health services because those health services were closed. So if you are on a medication, a chronic medication, you will find that people across could not actually get their chronic medications, predominantly older women. Pregnant women could not access antenatal clinics, and those who wanted to terminate pregnancies, because a lot of women during this time were raped and they were carrying babies that they did not even know who they belonged to. So if they wanted to go for a termination of pregnancy, you will find that most of the services were closed. The state after COVID will also have long standing impacts, because you will find that we are just talking about things that we have observed over the past 351 days. But if you look at issues of mental health, these are the issues that have a long-lasting effect on different people, on different women that have experienced gender-based violence, experienced issues, and that have not been properly addressed. And again, I just want to raise some of the issues that we saw. During the first month of level 5 lockdown, there were complaints that came to us as the Commission for Gender Equality coming from this province. And I really applaud the province, because they were able to say, look, Chairperson of the Gender Commission, we are unable to access baby clothes in shops. And I said, what is happening? They said that, you know what, because Tina asikwazi ukusheshe sithengele ingane sibeke eceleni, isiko lethu alivumi, uye uthenge impahla zomntwana ngoba umntwana esezelwe. Something that okay. And then in the shops, akunazimpahla. Okay, check Pick n Pay, check Pep, check that store. And I went out myself and I could see that the baby's clothes were not provided for, but the baby's products were there. But the newborn baby's clothes were there. And guess what we did? We managed to speak to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Nobabu Patel, because those were the 2 ministers responsible. And the following 2 days, the newborn baby's clothes were on the shelves. Okay, and the third thing that we observed, I'm just giving you snippets, was how child care as a burden for predominantly women was handled, especially for the essential workers time. I have a story to tell as well. This young couple, one is a nurse and one is a prison warder. The first 2 days, they could not even think because the baby or the child was actually taken to crèche every morning. But because of the lockdown that was announced, one else had to actually think, where do we take our children to? And let me tell you what happened in this couple's lives. That small child of a 4-year-old was actually locked in the house because there was no arrangement. There was no time to make an arrangement to leave the child either with neighbors or take the child to the granny or take the child to the relatives. So these are some of the things that were happening. So the risk of leaving the child with either neighbors was actually exposing the child to more abuse, because some of those abusers saw an opportunity to abuse our children because they were taken off the school and we did not make any arrangement in terms of leaving our children. So again, the employers themselves did not make any arrangement for the employees to take their children to work or to the workplace. And this is something that we've been talking about when we call organizations and government institutions to say, do you have a child facility in your department? And most of the answer is no. And this is what Commission for Gender Equality has been doing for the past 3 years, calling all government departments and say, PE child facility. If a mother wants to breastfeed, get break, do you have a facility behind in your department? And I'm telling you, if you want to know the answers here, you will not be happy with me because I'm not happy with them as well. We also observed around economic empowerment and entrepreneurial needs for women in South Africa. So the impact of the virus, impacted economically across, the board, and you will find that when we looked at gender equality and the realization of the epidemic around us, we saw that because people were asked to stay at home, isn't it? So when the employers were actually looking at who can actually be taken away from the staff, the first people who suffered were women because they work in the lower ranks. So when the employer was actually looking at, okay, now you must stay at home, don't come to work anymore, or the first people who felt, the prey were women because of the kind of the work that they do. Secondly, the source of income, the very same women who were actually doing small work, doing washing, hairdressing, doing services and catering services, you will find that those women are the ones that suffered during lockdown because the services that they would offer were closed at the time. And if we talk about economic relief and employment stimulus that government is currently talking about, it should actually look at issues of women and people's literacy, because you will find that most people who are unemployed, literate, are predominantly women. And looking at the social relief of distress, and we talk about the 350 rands that we collect at post offices every day, and you look at the queues and you wonder, and you money, if you look at it, there was a specification in terms of access of that 350 rands. And this money was targeted for the unemployed, but those unemployed were predominantly men, because women, it was said that women were catered for. Child's grant, so you are not eligible for the 350. Imali yengane, remember? Imali yomntwana, and lomntwana, once in a stamp, once that, it doesn't cater for your needs as a woman. So I think we did not think properly before we talked about the criteria and who's eligible and who's not eligible for this. So these are some of the things that we still need to challenge government moving forward with. It doesn't mean automatically usuyahola. And again, if we talk about COVID-19 lockdown, it impacted on gender wage inequality. And I know that my sister Halima was talking about this. But you know what? We come a very long way with this gender wage gap thing. Because what we believe in is that when we talk about gender wage gap, we're talking about equal pay for the work of equal value. And in many instances, we have seen how women and men have this wage gap. of 29%. You go to the same University of KwaZulu-Natal, men and Usipo, no Sebo, you come out with the same qualifications, you work for the same company, but you will find that Usipo will actually be earning 29% more than you earn, and you're doing the same number of hours you are putting, you are doing the same job, and the employers must look at this. And this was quite clear and obvious during COVID-19 period, that each gender wage gap was actually impacting on women and women only. So if we move forward in terms of what we observed was that, we wanted to actually look at how we could increase our, reach to people during this time. And here I am calling all of us, religious, traditional leaders, political leaders, to come together, media, to come together and make sure that, because now we're working through digital platforms, let's raise awareness around the things that we have seen. And it is familiar. The past year, we have seen where we have made mistakes, and we are trying to improve on the mistakes that we have done as we navigate through the COVID-19, a disease that we did not know. So we are also saying that we have been able to influence quite a lot of things in terms of the food parcels that have been distributed, the water supply. I know that there were issues in KwaZulu-Natal as well as Free State in terms of shortages of water, the total tanks that were delivered and not delivered, not reaching, but the water will be dirty coming out of the tap. So let's try and improve on these things. And generally, women and young girls have actually carried the burden, as we know that some of the cases that came to Gender Commission were cases of rapes when women were going to collect the water either in the rivers or in those jojo tanks. Towards the end, Program Director, I just want to say in conclusion that what we need to do, let's strengthen coordination of all our actions, especially in the province. I know that we have the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. We are currently establishing structures, but those structures, when they come down and cascaded in provinces, let's make sure that we coordinate, we get ourselves coordinated as government, as civil society organizations, as private sector, and we must actually unify our efforts in terms of dealing with the virus and responding to issues of gender-based violence and socio-economic impacts of the COVID-19. What we also need as a province is to leverage on our past experiences as how we applied, the public health campaigns and systems that we put in place in dealing with HIV and TB epidemic, and how we have managed to curb it. I remember I was still in this province. I was working for Department of Health. We were the best province. Everyone was actually coming to KwaZulu-Natal to learn how we are dealing with HIV and AIDS and STIs and TB. Sizoshulwa yini engasishula kule province to do the same, because we were the trailblazers when it comes to dealing with HIV. We need to tap on religious and non-traditional leaders. We need to make sure that the leaders are visible in coordinating and fighting the epidemic, because if it's not in the urban areas, it's ravaging in the rural areas where traditional and religious leaders are. We need to look at the laws. I've talked about the three gender-based violence bills. We need to look at that. We need to know about them. We need to make contributions to those bills before they are passed into laws, so that they speak to us. And again, what I've heard clearly is that we need to offer training. Ma, it's a pity Ma is not here. I call her Ma. The training that she spoke about is the training on gender responsive budgeting. In fact, it's gender responsive planning, gender responsive budgeting, gender responsive implementation, gender responsive, implementation, gender responsive monitoring and evaluation, gender responsive auditing. And I have written a letter to the Minister of Finance to say, Tate Tito Mboweni, asiqale ngawe baba, because even your budget speech are just silent when it comes to, and we need to even cascade this and go to the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation, DPME. We need to come to KwaZulu-Natal. Ma, if you say come next week, Gender Commission, siqale ngani ma, we are more than willing to organize as the Gender Commission. It's a commitment I'm making. Futhi uzowehla mina uqobo, and come and offer that training to the members of parliament, to the members of the Women's Caucus, and make sure that this gender GPRME is done in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's open more spaces for people to voice their needs, because angithi manje siyazi ukuthi isiphethe kanjani COVID. People must not die in silence. Let's open spaces for all of us to voice what we are currently experiencing, and let's leave no one behind. And I want a program director to leave you with a very nice African phrase. This phrase says that until the lions tell their own story, their side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. If we don't do it and tell our stories in KwaZulu-Natal, I'm telling you, someone else will tell our stories somewhere else. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kutete Wethu. Umathebula is one of us all the time, Sibanaye, and we have got a partnership, njenge legislature, njenge multi-party women's caucus. La ngokwe program kufanele ngabe siya kuma questions. Ngiyafisa nje ukuthi hleze ngemukele ucommissioner wakwaSalga ufake imask manje asimboni nokumbona. Ngithi ngiyabona ukuthi cha uye ngempela ucommissioner wayo i-multi-party women's caucus okuyena nabo chairperson bama multi-party women's caucus komasipala, because they are our partners sisebenzisana nayo. A warm hearty welcome, colleague. Siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi nibe khona. Ngenxa yesikhathi sesisemuva kakhulu, kufanele ngabe manje sesikhuluma i-keynote speaker ngokwe program ekhona. Sizocela nje ukuthi sithathe leli thuba sicela ukuthi sithole enye i-presentation ngoba sibuka isikhathi ukuthi siyasishaya, so that mangabe sesibuza ama questions singalokhu sibakhatha eduze. Sizocela ukuthi manje sicele udadewethu u-advocate Kholeka Gcaleka, an acting public protector of South Africa. Udadewethu uzobe addressela indaba yokulingana endaweni zokusebenza abantu besifazane bakwazi ukuthi bathole ukulingana administratively, politically and judiciary leadership positions. Lokho sibona ukuthi kubaluleke kakhulu ukuze siqonde ukuthi nakwi-judiciary ngoba unomlando omude udadewethu Kholeka, siyazi ukuthi uzithatha through, sibe ne-understanding ukuthi ukusebenza kulezi ndawo kumi kanjani, kuyakwazi yini ukuthi kusebenzeke ukuthi kubridgwe igap ukuya phambili. Siyazi-ke udadewethu u-acting advocate kwi-public protector uzosijoyina la kwi-connection akhulumisane nathi. A warm hearty welcome, public protector. Over to you, ma'am. there is a challenge there to the public protector. We will request that she summarized because of the time, and then we move to the next item. IT, can you assist? Can you assist the public protector? Is still talking, but is not coming well this side. And this is ocela labo abavule amakhamera bawavale laba bakuyi Microsoft. Sicela bewavale sibone ispeaker kuphela esikhulumayo because he has to step at this side. Can we please request all those that are in the visual platform to switch off their cameras as well as their mic? Over to you, Public Protector, to summarize.
Take note of the
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Acting Public Protector. I think you have given us a picture, especially in the representation in the judiciary. I think we still have got a long way to go to try and push. Thank you very much. Can we give her a big round of applause, please? Colleague, we are having a challenge with the next speaker. Which is Maharaj. She's having a problem to connect. There is that load shedding. That's why we are trying to push. Actually, according to the program, all the speakers were given 10 minutes. The panelists were given 10 minutes, with the exception of the guest speaker. So now we will then move and request the Honorable Madlopa Mthethwa to come and introduce the guest speaker of the day. Advocate Maserco. Siyacela dadewethu ukuthi uze ngaphambili uzosintroducela i-guest speaker yethu sikwazi ukuthi silalele. Sifisa ukuthi mayiqeda ukukhuluma yilapho sesizobiza khona ama-questions ngoba sibalekela ukuthi sizogcina singayiqedi i-program ngenxa ye-load shedding njengoba sekwenzekile nakumama Maharaj. Over to you, Dadewethu.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Our Honorable Speaker, Ms. Boyce, Interfaith Leadership, Abantwana Basendlunkulu present, our guest, members of the KZN Legislature, ladies and gentlemen. Due to the time, I have to be very short, and because of the day, it's very even difficult for anyone to come and stand here, especially because I also observe the Zulu culture, although we are also at work. I'm here to introduce a lady whose name is Lindy Maserco. She was born in Alexandra Township, Johannesburg, and grew up in Deep Kloof, Soweto. She was exposed to politics during the 1976 Soweto uprising while a student at Orlando High. This is a woman who is not chosen because she is a woman, but because of her credentials. Maserco was first elected as a member of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. She served in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature for 20 years and in the National Assembly for 5 years. She became the first woman speaker of the Gauteng Legislature and established the first Speakers Forum in 2019. And that is going to be there in history because she established the forum among all South African speakers, whether there is a female or man, but she did it. During her term as the Speaker of the Gauteng Legislature, she was appointed the chairperson of the Sector Oversight Model by the National Speakers Forum of South Africa. She has served in various leadership positions of the African National Congress and was a provincial treasurer in Gauteng for 3 consecutive terms among men, not because it was just to be counted, but because she was able to do the work. She was elected as the chairperson of Science and Technology from February 2017 to date. But Lindy Maserco is an international figure. To prove that, she has been involved in the Common Parliamentary Association from 1995 until 2018. In 2004, she was elected the first chairperson of CWP for 3 terms. For 3-year terms. In July 2015, she was elected the first women chairperson of the CPA Africa region, ESCO, for a 3-year term, 2012 to 2015, and was re-elected for the second term in 2015-2018. And if she was also interested, she should have been even today there because of her caliber. She has monitored and observed election in Mozambique, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and 3 times in Zimbabwe. She was invited by the State University of New York to conduct training for 47 new speakers in 2013. Akwandebani ukuthi usuke South Africa uyotrain speaker base New York about 47. We are speakers because of that woman. She is a trustee of Women and Men Against Women and Child Abuse. Lindy enjoys reading motivational books,
and biographies, and is a proud mother of 3 daughters, 1 deceased and 2 grandsons. I'm then giving her a chance to say something because she is a lady that we also need to follow in her steps. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Madoka Mthethwa. We now present to you Advocate Lindy Maserco to talk to us. Thank you.
Good afternoon.